David Beem. Is this happening?
Yes, I am.
Is this Wrestling Talk with David Beem?
Yes, it is.
I like your show. This is pretty cool. I like the background. We got like a white wrestling ring back here. It's pretty cool.
Yes.
So it looks like it says WrestleTalk up on top of the screen. It's right up here.
Yeah.
I won't go too high. WrestleTalk. I like it, David Beem. So introduce yourself.
My name is David Beem. I go to all the the matches in Salem area for all the wrestling matches, and I meet with them and talk to them, and I have a good time with everybody.
Yeah.
And I was a little kid. I growed up and watching that show.
Did you? So I was the same way. I grew up watching wrestling with my grandparents.
Yes.
So they were way into the wrestling. So were my great-grandparents. So, yeah, there was no way of getting around Portland wrestling on Saturday night, right?
Yeah.
That was kind of the thing. So, tell everybody out there a little bit about your show, like what you want to do here. Because I thought this was a great idea. When we talked, I liked this idea.
My idea is to get this, all the wrestlers come in and do a show with me, how they was growed up to be going in professional wrestling.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to Jeff if we can get more people to come and have a good time and meet the families and have a good time with kids.
Yeah.
And the kids can meet the wrestlers and then, and have a good time with them.
I think it's a good idea too, because I know something that a big part of wrestling, if the guys have the time to do it, is their ability to kind of do outreach outside of the show. The promotional things they can do where they go on other shows, they do radio, they do TV, they do internet stuff. They do fundraisers, they do things for kids. So when you talked about doing this show and actually inviting wrestlers on, I saw this as a really good way for them. It would be like a one episode, it'd be a new wrestler each time, right?
Each time it'd be different wrestlers come in the Northwest and have a good time and then talk to the families and meet the people,
It's a good idea. I think it's also a good way. A lot of when you see the wrestling shows, really that's about the in-ring action and the story. This show could be more about that person themselves. Right. Like
when they're growed up and how they got involved in wrestling.
Yeah, that's a good part is how did they get into it? How did they first get started? What got them into wrestling that first time? That'd be awesome. That's something you don't usually hear a lot about from wrestlers. You see them just on the show only, and then. So this would be for the fans as well, right?
Yeah, I wanted to bring in the fans, come in here, do a show with me too, and see what could be better out there,
Well, something we'll promote down the road is once you have a series spot and we have regular playtimes. This is the first show, so if you're watching this right now, this is David Beem's episode 1 of WrestleTalk with David Beem. So this is the first one. So this is kind of the warm up. And just so for people out there watching, David and I are both fans. We both go to the same shows. We go to the local WCWC shows. We have fun with it. I used to film wrestling. I used to actually make shows for Morty Lipschitz. I used to do shows for that guy back in the day before I got a job here. So I really enjoyed it. When I was doing field work, the most fun I had filming when I was in the field, when I was an independent producer, was doing wrestling. I really got into the story. I really liked working with the talent. The people were all very creative and talented, and they were able to they can tell a story different than anyone else. They're telling an action story. So if you see movies and plays or music videos, they're doing stories through music or through plays or movies. There's all sorts of elements they use. These guys are doing live action. So what I always saw it as like a live action movie where you didn't know how it was going to end and you didn't know what the stunts were. And I like that.
But I wanted to bring it to the people, and the businesses too.
Yeah.
And I wanted to bring them all in and do a show with me and see what. To be helping with the families too and the businesses too, downtown.
Well, I think so. I think, that was one thing with the state of Oregon. Was in the 90s, we basically had a wrestling/boxing commissioner, and during the 90s, that person made it very strict for there to be any wrestling or boxing. So it kind of disappeared in Oregon for over like 10 years. So when it used to be big, when I was a kid in the 80s, for my Grandpa when it was big in the 50s and 60s, for my great-grandparents when it was big in the 40s going into the 50s, but really the 1950s. That was kind of lost on a generation. So younger people nowadays, it's around, but they're not, I don't know that they're into it in this area.
A lot of young kids involved in that. And going to school and watch it on TV, or to go to watch WWF and the NWC.
It's on TV. I mean, that's for sure. They're out there doing their stuff. So. And
they're meeting the fans too.
Well, I think if you could, let's talk to the people out there, and especially this kind of goes out to the wrestlers, right? Because what we were talking about was, I'll put my email address at the bottom of the screen. It's Arlan@CCTV Salem, but I am the community facilitator here at CCTV, so I help people make shows. And David Beem's one of our producers. He wants to make a show. This is it. We're making a television show.
Right.
One of the things we wanted to call out to everybody, and the wrestlers, for starters, I'll put my email at the bottom of the screen. Shoot me an email if you want to be on the show. We're going to do the show once a month. We'll book the time. We'll invite you in, and it'll be a one-on-one. David will ask you some specific questions about your career, and to give the fans
your background.
The background and your history, what you're doing now, maybe what they're going to do in the future.
Right.
You know what I mean? A real way for you to kind of to really let the fans know about you. They can find out more about kind of what you're all about.
Right.
So, which I think is kind of a fun.
And I'm bringing different guests going to be in, the different wrestlers in the different countries, and I want to bring them in.
Oh yeah.
And that's what I want to do.
That could be a real riot. I think it could be fun. So
it'd be good for the fans, really.
And we already have a guest booked for next week, and it is none other than
Jeff Manning.
Jeff Manning, aka also known as Morty Lipschitz. So I mean, you know, this is the Mellow Show. Wait till that guy shows up. I also hear he's bringing Stump with him. So.
Yes, and
Stump ain't gonna say much, but he's gonna make his presence
we get along good.
He'll probably stand right about here. You'll just see Stump's head right about here is where Stump will be the whole time. So that's what he does. So he always stands there and goes.
But I really like to see the fans come in and talk about wrestling. I want the little kids come and talk about it.
We can do that. We could have a studio audience where we can invite people. And another thing you and I talked about, once we get the series in place and people know the play times, we'll promote a live call-in too.
Okay.
Because that's something we can do where people can actually call in, and we'd put a number at the bottom of the screen, and you would call in and ask the wrestler or David a question. You might have there might be a wrestler, you have a question for them. Maybe you got a question for David Beem because you've seen him around. You want to ask him something. But that would be another element. I think these are things we'll grow into.
I'm growing into it, and I love this. This is going to be good for me, and it'll be good for the wrestlers.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think formula-wise, too, it's repeatable. It's something I think we can do over and over. What I've seen with producers on their first shows, it's kind of hard to get started. Once you do those first couple, then you're going, then you've got a formula, and then it's repeatable. Once we get to that point, it's smooth sailing. So the elements you guys see, this background, we put this together, and the close-ups and the lower thirds, we've built all the elements we need to do the show. All we need now is, of course, to get, get some talent in. We'll get some people.
That's what I want.
Maybe we'll invite in fans then too. Maybe before I said for the wrestlers, maybe I'm going to put my email up again because this is something I'm doing for David. If you want to be talent on the show and you contact my email, I'll let David know. We'll book a studio show and we can have you be a part of it. Maybe you can be in the audience. Maybe you'll actually be an interview. I mean, David will interview you if you're a fan too. So. But if you're interested, we want you to contact us first so we know. We'll pick a time and a date, we'll schedule it, and then it's something we can, pretty easy to get in and do.
And I want to bring the kids from school too. Come in
I think it'd be fun if we had a wrestler here. If some kids came in, they'd probably get a kick out of it, right? They'd probably think that was cool. You guys can't see this, but behind the cameras we have room for a studio audience. So we could totally bring in some kids, and then they could, you could be a part of the live studio audience when we do an interview thing. So, well, we do know we can promote this because we know the next show is next Tuesday. What I'm hurting on is the dates. What you're going to see is on the bottom of the screen. Again, we're going to put a date up there. That's going to be our next taping, and it's tentatively next Tuesday at 6 p.m. And we're going to have Morty/Jeff here.
Right.
And he's the promoter of WCWC. He's a manager extraordinaire. He's going to be here. So if you're watching this show and you see it in time, I mean, again, this might not air in time, but if you did see the show for next Tuesday and you had time at 6 p.m., I'll put the date up on when we're going to do it. you know, swing on by.
And
we'd let you sit in here. Right?
And I'm asking all the fans too, call the station. You want to be on my show, or this?
I think the email's the big one.
Just bring you got email. Just email the station or back to Arlan as soon as possible.
Yeah, it'll be pretty easy.
I think this will be good for everybody.
Yeah. Well, I'm interested because most of the stuff I see on the local wrestlers, when you go to the big companies, WWE, Impact Wrestling, those wrestlers, their top guys, do a ton of promotional pieces, right? They're all over the country. They're doing all sorts of things. So I think something we don't have locally is different things the wrestlers can do to kind of promote themselves and get the word. You know, and it's more exposure. They can also do some things that are benefits, good things for the kids. This is, I think, you offering that's a pretty cool thing, David. I think that's pretty awesome.
I'm asking all the wrestlers, please call in or fax one to Arlan, please, and as soon as possible, because I would really like all the wrestlers to come in and do a show with me, because this is to be a good thing for everybody and for Arlan too.
That'd be fun. That's one thing I'm doing with my job here is trying to get more people in actually doing shows. So yeah, we're pretty much game here. As far as CCTV goes, we're down for doing some TV. We want to get you guys involved. Shameless plug for my job, but you know, if you want to do a show too, that same email, arlan@cctvsalem.org, it'll be on the bottom of the screen. You know, contact me, email me. Maybe you have an idea for a show you want to do too. We won't say no to it. You'll have to take a class. You'll have to learn how to do some stuff, but super doable, right? Like it's all trying to make this pretty easy to do. But I wanted to give your show a different look. I thought I wanted to do a different wrestling ring so people know and they see it. There's a ring. There's David Beem. He's talking. Okay, that must be, and it says WrestleTalk up on top. They know what's going on, right?
Yes, and I do go to all the wrestling matches.
Yeah, you go to a lot of shows, don't you?
And I never missed one.
Wow. Yeah, I don't go as often as I should.
And I get along with all of them, and them talk to me all the time. All the bad ones, all the good ones, I get along with all of them, and they really want to be on my show. So I'm urging all of them, please, get back to Arlan as soon as possible. Well, and thank you for having me on.
Yeah, it's easy stuff, man. I mean, this is what we do. How did you first start watching wrestling? What's your first memory of pro wrestling? Anyways, what was yours?
I was 15 years old.
So you're like a teenager and
stuff?
stuff?
And then I went with Sandy. I met Sandy Barr in Portland, the flea market.
He used to be the owner and promoter of Portland Wrestling.
Right. And we got along good, and he hired me to be like a roadie with him. Wow. And I did that, and that's how Jeff knows me.
Oh. Now, what did you do as a roadie? What did he have you do?
Set up the rings.
So you do set up the rings. Would you do security stuff and all that?
No, just set up the ring and be on the road.
Would you go on the road and do the road shows then? You guys would
travel
around?
I did that with Sandy Barr.
Well, because I grew up in Oregon City, so we would go see.
I met most every wrestler we had.
Meet them all? See, we used to go to the Portland shows at the where was he off of?
82nd.
Was it off 82nd where he was? But we used to go see the shows at the Sportatorium. Yeah. But we wouldn't go all the time. We'd go about like once a month. But that was pretty cool because that was the KPTV 12 station. And for us, that was my first experience with a local TV station.
And I met Tom Peterson.
Yeah, I met him too. And he would be at the live shows too. Yeah. He'd do live commercials there. So it was this very kind of, it was the old way they did TV. Yeah. It was really neat. What years were those that you were doing that? When
was 19 or 20.
So was this like back in like the 80s or the 70s or?
Yeah, I used to go to shows. I was living in Portland, and I decided to go and watch them. And I met most every wrestler, and they'll come in the Northwest. So I got along with it. So I decided maybe this is the future of me now to have my own show and guest.
Well, those were the big days too. We're talking like Roddy Piper.
Yeah, I met Piper.
Billy Haynes, the Grappler. We got to
Matt Bourne.
Matt Bourne, the Crippler, Rip Oliver. Got to mention Rip Oliver.
He's still around.
Yeah, he's a legendary bad guy.
And his son still wrestles.
Playboy Buddy Rose.
Yeah.
Right. This was when wrestling was at its biggest in the 1980s.
Yeah, in Salem area.
So locally, Portland wrestling was still huge too, right? I mean, it was a big time. I was a kid then, so same thing for me. It was this really wild time where wrestling got just huge. I don't know that it's ever been as big as it was in the 1980s. That was a really good time.
But I want Jeff to do his stuff, and I want to have my own show here. Then there won't be no problems. Yeah. Because I want to try to work out a deal with Jeff.
Well, yeah, and what you're doing isn't competing with a wrestling show.
No, I'm not.
What you're doing is adding to wrestling.
Right, adding into it.
What you're doing is giving people a chance to do that extra thing.
Right.
So, I mean, I like that. I think I think it's good for wrestling. I think what you're doing is a good thing. You and I have known each other for a long time.
Right.
You've been a guest on several other producers' shows. You've directed here. You've done a lot of the studio stuff here. So you were one of the people I wanted to see get your own show, and we talked wrestling quite a bit. Like, that was one thing we had.
That's what I want to do all my life. I want to do this. So I decided, well, maybe this time, maybe this year is my time.
Well, I think it's doable.
I think it will work.
Well, and I've got your back on this. This show's a little weird because Charles is directing for us, so thank you, Charles.
Thank you, Charles.
Normally, I'll be in that room helping do the show. So, I mean, I've got your back on this. All we've got to do now is line up talent. We have to get people who are interested in wrestling. We need to get wrestlers to come in and do interviews. I know a few wrestlers myself, so I'll probably reach out to them. There's a couple wrestlers out there I know I'd really like to have in because I go back a long ways.
And I'd like to have some businesses come in and talk about wrestling.
Oh yeah, it would be. Well, we'll talk about that. You know, we'll figure out what we can do on that, make that work.
That's in the future on that.
Yeah.
Coming down the line.
Well, I don't know. Okay, so you kind of told me your history of wrestling. You knew Sandy Barr. You worked as like a roadie and did stuff. How far around do you travel around to see shows? I
went to the coast, Caballos, Lebanon. Just travel around with Sandy Barr. I did.
Okay. As far as nowadays goes,
I just go to see the show
here
in Salem
the Salem
area.
Shows. Okay. Yeah, you go to the Salem ones because there's other stuff. There's
one in Portland.
There's the DOA wrestling doing stuff, and Portland has a couple other promotions going. One of my old friends, CC Poison, had a wrestling show out at Astoria or out by the coast, I think. He's an awesome guy. He was doing his stuff. So they're out there. And back when I used to film the shows, I'd do different areas. I did one in Eugene, one here, one in Milwaukee. That was Pacific Northwest Pro Wrestling, PMPW, my first gig.
And a lot of those Kaiser one too.
Yeah, the DOA guys were in Kaiser, and I think they still are. They do a heck of a show too. What I liked was when I did a lot of those different shows, a lot of the fans traveled around. They're dedicated.
You don't want to watch it, and they have a good time.
Yeah, they went to all those shows,
and some of them didn't miss it.
That's a pretty big thing to travel that much around for supporting local wrestling. There's probably a good core of 30, 40 people that they'll travel and hit the different shows and go to the different ones. That's pretty cool. I mean,
the problem is some people don't know where the show is for the school.
Well, yeah, it can be a promotional thing. It's always hard to find out. The other one is knowing all the different promotions out there.
See, that's the problem.
Like, we know WCWC, we know Jeff, so we know his stuff.
It's good.
I know DOA because of G-Shock Garrett. I know G-Shock, and I remember filming him when he was one of the young guys.
I see him once in a while in the show.
I would love to try and get Garrett on the show too. He's a heck of a guy. Another wrestler, the first guy I worked for, his name was Thunder. And
he's still around.
He just went through a surgery, so for Thunder, I hope you get better. But he's another guy.
I hope you get better too.
He'd be way fun to have on the show. He's a good feller. But all the wrestlers have been good guys.
And they're all cool. I like to see some wrestlers from Portland come down and be on my show too.
It'd be cool. Well, I think we'll keep it flexible again. At the end of the show, I'll put my email up again, so if someone is interested, wrestler or fan, if they want to be a part of the show. If they email, contact me, I'll book it. It's easy. Dave's easy. I book it. I let him know. He'll come in and do it. We do a half hour, right?
Yep,
we do like
half hour would be
show,
fine with me.
Pretty easy stuff. What do you see happening with wrestling in the future? Like, where do you think locally? Where do you think things are going to go locally? I mean, I think it'll survive.
I think Jeff's going to go.
It'll always be around, right?
Well, I think Jeff's going to be still doing what he's doing. He's going to be like promoting more.
Yeah. He's been doing pretty good. He told me he was getting on some other TV stations and stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's kind of growing. He's expanding his
But
stuff.
I like to see Jeff do couple times with me, and get different wrestlers in different states to come in and do a show with me, and that's what I would like to see done.
Yeah, because that's part of the fun is being able to meet the different guys. Who were some of the most fun wrestlers you got to meet? Like, who were some of the, you were just really stoked you got to actually meet them?
Oh, Ric Flair.
Ric Flair? I never got to meet him.
I met Ric Flair, Iron the Giant.
Andre the Giant?
I met him.
Wow.
Grand Theater.
Wow.
Stan Stasiak, met him.
Stan the Man Stasiak, I remember.
Crush Stan, Beauregard, met him. All the big stars used to be here in Salem at the Grand Theater. That's where they started at.
Wow. So they used to do shows. How often would they come do the shows? Once a week?
Every Thursday they did.
They do them over at the Grand. Just actually from here, it's just down the block and across the street.
They did.
Wow. That would be that'd be a pretty cool venue to see a wrestling show. I think for me, I grew up in Oregon City, so our local Oregon City guy was Billy Jack Haynes.
Yeah,
good guy.
He was a good guy.
We saw him at Danielson's Thriftway in Oregon City all the time, and we'd go see him in the Portland wrestling shows. Then when he went to the WWF, he actually opened up a gym in Oregon City, and when they did the grand opening, Hulk Hogan showed up for the grand opening. That's
what I want to see here, too.
We got to meet Billy Jack and I got to meet Hulk Hogan in Oregon City. And I remember this was like probably mid-'80s, 85, 86, maybe 87. So, I mean, Hulk Hogan was he was big. And Hulk Hogan wasn't any bigger than he was then. So it was kind of cool because I got that sense that guy promoted everywhere. Like that guy he didn't just do the wrestling. He was constantly out there doing stuff. But a friend of his opened a gym and he flew in and did a grand opening. And it was huge. There was a lot of people there.
I've been watching Atlanta wrestling back in Atlanta, Georgia. I've been watching that.
I remember a lot of the old wrestling shows that aren't around anymore, and that is kind of sad. I hate to see
them all gone.
I hate to see them go because it was kind of a different time. It was wrestling was so big. There was all these other shows that were up and coming that were kind of fun.
And a lot of parents growed up in that.
Yeah, it's still around. I don't see it going anywhere. It's friendlier than it used to be. The '90s was more of a it wasn't as family friendly. They kind of went a bit edgier in the '90s, and they seem to have peeled that back in the kind of mid 2000s, and then 2005 on, they've been kind of scaling that back to being more family friendly, which was pretty much what the '80s were. I mean, that's where the '80s were at the time. So
and maybe a lot of young kids got married and growed up in that watching it.
Yeah, and then like their kids will see it too. So, that was. That's what I wonder with the future is. Locally, I hope I see it grow.
I think it will. Right? On my show, I think it's going to grow, and more people will go and watch the shows.
Well, I think it would help anyways.
It would help, and have a good time, you know.
Yeah. Well, if you get the wrestlers will be real characters too. I mean,
and I get along with it. I get along with every one of them. So
I can't wait to get Morty here next week. You'll have a blast with him.
And I think the show is going to be good for Marty, and it's going to be good for me, and it's going to be good for everybody, really.
It'll even be good for Stump. If that's possible.
Yeah, it'd be good for him.
If anything could be good for Stump, if that's possible. I think the show would be good for even Stump.
Yeah.
Nothing's good for that guy.
It'd be good for Marty and the Stump, and it'd be good for all the wrestlers, really. Yeah.
Well, he used to do a talk show here, and it was a different format than what you would offer. I mean, it was more of a, he's the promoter, he's a manager. So when they did shows, it was more about what was upcoming on their next live show. This would be more of a one-on-one kind of thing. So it is something different. It's something I know it's something you'll be good at.
Yes, I know I would be.
I know you're into it, and if someone's into something, it's amazing. As far as what I do here and helping people make shows, the only people that come in and do shows are people that are into whatever it is. Either they're excited about something, or they're angry about something, or they want you to know more about something. But that's the trick, is finding that thing someone's into. They'll do a show about it. So, well, it looks like we got a couple minutes. Let's end it a little early. I think we did good, David Beem.
I think I did good on this.
We did about 26 minutes. I think we did okay. I don't think we have to go the whole way. But here's the thing. I want you to look at the middle camera, and I want you to send us out. Say night to everybody and send us out.
Thank you for having me on. CPTV. Thank you, and I will come back and watch to be on the show, and I have Marty on my show, the promoter for the Northwest.
All right. Yeah, that'll be next Tuesday.
Next Tuesday, please call in or just email, please, as soon as possible.
All right, good stuff.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, take it easy, guys.
Bye.